Good evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole for the Village of Cary for December 5th, 2023 to order with roll call, please.
Walrath,
Here.
Collier,
Here.
Stefani,
Here.
McAlpine,
Here.
Collier, Dudek,
Here.
Weinhammer,
Here.
Would you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you. Now moving to public comments where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. I have one individual sign in. Ms. Erickson?
My comment is focused on the discussion regarding home rule. Would you like me to hold it until that time then?
Sure, that would be perfect.
Perfect.
Anybody else would like to address the village board? Or the committee of the whole? Okay, we'll go ahead and close at 6:21. We have two things on the discussion. Our discussion items is village parking regulations.
I guess it's me.
That's you.
So, I made it just in time back after. But we have a couple of different things that we want to talk about as it relates to parking ordinances and some considerations that the village board may wish to discuss and ultimately either change or maintain the same regulations that we have. So, who's got the? Okay, there you go. Thank you. So a couple things we're going to do here is define why we have the downtown parking regulations set up the way we do now. We'll talk about the permit parking in the commuter lot, particularly the at center parking lot that is only permit parking. Parking regulations related to Maplewood School. There'll be a construction project over there, and the Cary Youth Baseball Association will not be using those fields next year, but we do have several streets that are affected by seasonal parking restrictions as well as parking restrictions year-round in that area. A discussion about overnight parking. We're in that era of December 1st to March 31st restriction for overnight parking between 1 and 6 a.m. But we can apply it in other circumstances to maybe achieve some objectives that we'd like to achieve, particularly downtown. And then the challenges we're having in regards to enforcement as it relates to the downtown parking regulations in particular. So this next slide is very busy, but I think it illustrates the myriad of restrictions that we have in the downtown area. You can see that primarily on Main Street we have 2-hour parking, but we have 4-hour parking on High Road, 6-hour parking on portions of Cary Street. There's a lot that is available not for commuters but for additional downtown parking that's north of the BMO Harris parking lot. On Jandis we have 2-hour parking and 2 handicap parking spaces in that area. And the issue here would be, what are we trying to achieve in regards to all these different parking regulations and restrictions in this area? There's a couple other things that kind of are factors in regards to making decisions related to the downtown parking area, and those are 3 multi-family residential buildings, 2 of which do not have a lot or any on-site parking. So the residents of those areas are reliant upon on-street parking. But with our current restrictions that are related to overnight parking, number one, and the restrictions as it relates to snow removal, those individuals are challenged to find areas to park. And then there are just some areas like the restrictions on Spring Street south of Cary Street, where it's restricted no parking between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. between Monday through Friday, and I really don't know what the purpose was in regards to that. I couldn't find any historic reference in regards to those regulations. So the other part of the discussion is that when I started 10 years ago, or just about 10 years ago, some of these building owners assumed that they had a agreement with the village to allow their residents to park on the street, and there's no such agreements that exist. If they were anything, they were handshake agreements, but our patrol officers do enforce the parking regulations in the downtown area, and sometimes that can be cumbersome to the residents as it relates to parking and sometimes convenience. So the next slide will talk about what we suggest, or what's one solution in regards to the parking regulations in the downtown area, and that is to prohibit no overnight parking. That would be no parking between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. year-round on High, Cary Street, Spring Street, Giandis Road, and Main Street. And we would have a mechanism to allow for permit parking on the two areas that you see here in green, as a legend, to allow individuals that would, through some mechanism that we set up through the village, we already have a mechanism for permit parking, to allow them to park overnight on the roadway in those areas, but it would allow us to identify those individuals that would park in those areas, and we'd have some contact information if there was a need to have the vehicles moved, because right now it's sometimes difficult to find a telephone number for somebody because there's no landline numbers associated with a residence anymore. Any questions in regards to the information that you've seen on the, they're very busy slides, and I understand that, but I was trying to illustrate, or we were trying to illustrate, that there's a lot of different restrictions there, and there's even 15-minute parking on Main Street and 2 on Giandis Road. And I believe that we're trying to turn over parking in that area so that some of the businesses or even the restaurants have the ability to have their patrons be able to park in those areas. Any questions or? Oh. Okay.
Well, I have a
I have
question,
Good.
So if you're going to allow, if you allow permit parking, how are you going to prevent somebody from just parking a vehicle there and never moving it?
Well, that would actually, that's going to be the next slide, but
sorry.
the issue is related to, it would give us, the police department, responsible for enforcing those regulations, the ability to, at night, figure out, cars that are parked down there overnight. Now, there would be people that would be authorized to park overnight on the street, but they would have a permit that they would have to display that would be issued by the village.
How many residents need parking overnight? Do you know? How many cars?
Well, if you, I'm going to guess, but I would say on High Street, there's about 6, because there's 2 spots on Main in front of that white building that's at Main and High, and there's probably 4 to 6 that park along High Street on the west side. Now, there's another building at Spring and Cary Street that has some overnight off-street parking. I believe there's 6 or 8 spots there, but I believe there's between 11 and 13 units there. So there's not, right now that would be, and you're gonna hear this later on because I like this phrase, but it's a pre-existing non-conforming use of that area. Because if they were to build those buildings now, they would have to have 2.5? 2.25, okay. 2.25 parking spots for every residential unit.
Thank you.
That's pretty much what my question was.
Okay.
I just have a question related to what facilitated this? Is there something going on is it just something you think it's time to review it? Is there something going on that's causing some challenges for your staff? I mean, I'm just curious what brought this here.
Well, I think part of it is what we're trying to achieve in regards to just downtown. And the last time we discussed parking regulations was 2017. And with the the change in seasons, December 1st, and the restrictions for overnight parking, felt it was a good idea. And to be honest with you, this was a topic that we've been talking in staff from September, getting it on the agenda. So I think we just were able to schedule it to December to talk about some of the issues related to the downtown area and the fact that we've just renovated the downtown area, and there'll be another slide that'll show the current configuration of Main Street and the regulations that are associated with the current configuration. Right on cue, there's your overlay of the current configuration of Main Street, and you can see where we have the different regulations as it relates to, or restrictions as it relates to parking in those areas. So some of the, I guess the next slide is going to be our discussion points here, is why do we want to do this? And it gets to to why we're talking about it now, is that the restriction for overnight parking in that area would more clearly allow us to identify those vehicles that haven't moved within 24 hours. It also will be able to capture information associated with the vehicles, so that if there's a need to move them from street maintenance or snow removal, that we would have that information. It would address that phrase that I love. It's the pre-existing non-conforming multi-residential buildings in those areas. It would standardize the parking, because right now we have 6 hour, 4 hour, 2 hour, and it'll reduce it between 2 and 4 hours to address the 2 hour parking. I'm certain we were trying to achieve some degree of turnover in those parking spots for the restaurants, but there's also some associated parking for other businesses in the area. And we do have some information as it relates to the distances between areas in that downtown area, and the longest someone might have to walk is 0.2 of a mile, and that would equate to about 5-minute walk anywhere in that downtown area. That's the longest distance that anyone would have to walk. From our standpoint, there's always been the Metro Lot, and I know the mayor will say that there is no parking problem downtown. There's a parking perception problem downtown. So there's plenty of parking downtown. It's just if it's someplace that someone wants to park. So the other thing is that it removes the incentive to use the roadway street as a storage option. In 2017, we addressed that in the ordinance, because we had individuals that would put their boats and campers on the roads not attached to a power unit. And we addressed that through ordinance, that you have to have a power unit attached to a trailer if it's going to be on the roadway. And then it certainly is something that we're addressing, because I know that we've removed at least one vehicle that was abandoned on Cary Street. And by enacting these ordinances, it would allow us to identify and remove those vehicles sooner to, number one, open up those parking spots, but number two, in regards to the appearance of the downtown area. Did I miss anything in regards to discussion points?
Will you entertain questions?
I'm happy to. That's what we're here for.
All right.
Free flow discussion.
Okay, great. That's what I like. In general, I would like to see a uniform hour. You pick the hour, whether it's 2, 3, 4. It seems a little excessive, but uniformity throughout the whole downtown, to me, makes more sense. I'm not sure the the logic or the background behind the 15-minute spots. I get it, there's in and out stuff that people want to do, but it seems like there were quite a few of those, and maybe we could
Should go back
eliminate
to the
some of them and incorporate them into the longer term. And then a question on the Metro, because it's a kind of a point that we always talk about somehow or other. What time is it, Eric, after a certain time when the Metro parking lot can be used?
11:30 a.m. on weekdays. It's free after that.
After 11:30.
Free on weekends.
So, to your point, there's a lot of room there. I would encourage us to think about some signage that tells people that they can park free in the Metro lot, instead of just, here I'm 20 years, I have to ask him the question, because I don't know that I can park there at 4 o'clock on a Friday when I want to go to one of the restaurants. So we put some signage out there that tells people, that not even 0.2 of a mile, but maybe a block or half a block walk. And there's plenty of parking.
There is a sign.
Where?
Right in front of where 750 is, getting into that parking lot, it does say free after 11:30.
Well, we need a few more.
Yeah,
We need some nice
absolutely.
ornamental
We
signs
do
that
need,
tells
that's
people they
that's
can
on
go
our
there.
agenda. We're working on our wayfinding sounds.
Well, you asked for input, I'm giving you the input.
No. And with the 15-minute spots, I'm gonna take this one if you don't mind. There are businesses down there that utilize those for like the florist. They have in and out service, and then for the coffee store, in and out service. We've actually gained in the last 12 months. What do we get? We've netted 17 new parking spaces downtown. Correct me if I'm wrong. 17 new spots that we've never had before. So again, we're creating more opportunities for people, and it is up to us. And as I say, we don't have a parking problem downtown. We have a problem telling people where to park downtown.
Sure, yeah.
And that is what we're going to be doing, a lot more wayfinding signs, so we can let people know where to park. But we have to encourage business owners, and I have a business downtown. I always park on Cary Street. Don't park in front of your establishment and complain about parking. It doesn't solve the problem. You could walk 0.2 of a mile. Cary Street all day long, all afternoon. There's nobody parked there, none. But Spring Street will be packed, and a lot of them are business owners that are parking on Spring
Didn't we
Street.
talk about at one point having business owners, employees have parking permits so they can park in the Metro lot for free?
Well, we did that during the downtown renovation. I don't know if that's something that, that's something that we could do.
Well, if we don't want them
can look
parking
at.
in front of there,
Yeah.
the thought. Yeah, 0.2 of a mile is pretty
Yeah,
far.
they didn't like the, yeah,
Unsafe,
it's too
it's
far.
not lighted
I
enough.
mean, the bottom line is, if you have a business down there, then I think you have to be cognizant, and you need to make sure that your employees know where they can park, what's acceptable. You could work at the Jewel, and they used to say, and I don't know if they do anymore, but it used to be you had to work, you worked there, you parked in the way back, so you had to walk into the store to get there, so the people that were shopping at your store had the closer spots. It's really, again, a little bit of an educational component that has to go to the business owners.
I agree. Was there another question in that, Trustee Dudek?
I'm sure I had another one, but I'll defer my time to others.
You can come on up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Martha Ritter, 239 North School Street. This is about residential parking. Can you park on this, is that what that's called, skirt? A skirt? Is that what that's called? You know what I mean? Like, here's the sidewalk.
Parkway, maybe the Parkway?
I don't know if that's called the parkway.
On your driveway? You can't park on a parkway. You can't park on grass.
No, but it's like the sidewalk's here, and then the end of your driveway. What is that called? What is that called?
The apron, I
apron.
believe you can park there. It's your driveway.
Can't block the sidewalk.
Can't block, as long as you're not blocking the sidewalk. If you want to parallel park right there,
Oh, you can? Okay.
I see people do that all the time.
I was just wondering.
You can't block
But you
you
can't
can't
block-
block the street or the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments about this? One more? Okay, more slides?
More
Oh,
slides.
there's more slides. Oh, no, there's more. Well, I promised that there's a couple different points that we're going to
Scenarios,
discuss, so The other one is that we have permit parking, and right now what the village is experiencing is a reduction in the demand for permits. I believe that's just the nature of the workforce post-COVID. And I went out and took a couple of pictures of the far north lot, which is adjacent to the District 26 transportation facility. That's the North Metro lot, and it's pretty well, used. But if you see that upper left-hand corner picture, that's the permit parking lot. So I know that the village administrator had previously discussed a different manner of using the permit parking area, and this is not something that has to be decided today, but certainly in the future, and certainly as it relates to budget, because right now those particular spots are not numbered, and the spots that are for daily use are numbered. And the system that we use requires that somebody pay for a spot specifically. So the permit parking is kind of open because we would have a decent demand or significant demand for a parking permit prior to 2020. And subsequently, with more remote work, remote working arrangements, it doesn't appear that people are buying parking permits at the same rate as they were before, because they might be going downtown a couple days a week versus 5 days a week. So that's something to consider here, and I tried to illustrate that with these photos. And then I believe the last thing that we want to talk about are the baseball fields, because the Cary Grove Youth Baseball Softball Association is not going to be using those baseball fields next year, but you'll see that seasonally those gold lines illustrate that there's no parking in those areas between May 1st and August 31st. And then the black arrows and the signs that indicate there's no parking year-round on basically the west side of school and then the south side of Krenz. And understand that that area used to be busy as it related to vehicular traffic and school operations when the school was being used for that purpose, but the school hasn't been used for that purpose in a while. And I believe that there's going to be some construction area as it relates to, development in that area. And I don't know if that Director Simmons had anything to discuss in regards to this as well.
Just from an update standpoint, as the board's aware, the school district is moving forward with their plans to redevelop the transportation center on the property, and then also demolish the existing school. So the future use of the site will continue to have a transportation center on the property, and then some ball fields as well. They will eliminate one ball field for the redevelopment of the transportation center. So there may be some changes to traffic in this area as that development occurs or is finalized. It's more to bring up for discussion purposes if there's a need to visit this at this time or wait until that construction is completed to understand what the impacts in the neighborhood might be if there's changes to the parking restrictions in that area.
Any questions in regards to that, or? Nope.
Are you suggesting that we remove the no parking restrictions?
Well, certainly for this year, it's not going to be necessary because they're not going to be using the fields in the manner that they've used them in the past. But I don't know, in the future, how the fields and what the capacity is going to be and the demand in that area. And I know that some of the residents in that area are cognizant of the parking restrictions, and there's even a no U-turn sign on Krenz between Prairie Street and School Street.
So do you get a lot of complaints because of those restrictions? When you say they're aware of it, I mean, being aware and complaining about it to me are two different things.
Well, it's been my experience doing this that any change is going to cause a reaction. And the issue really was, in my mind when we started discussing these things, is that those seasonal restrictions, may not be necessary this year, and I don't know going forward. So, that may be something that we're going to have to review, and just to make you aware that these seasonal restrictions are in place. We have seasonal restrictions in other areas. For example, on Ann Street, and I believe Eldon, we have restrictions as it relates to high school parking. And some areas behind the high school, we have restrictions as it relates to when there are athletic events in progress. And even at, I think, Galway and Adair, we have restrictions there when there's athletic events occurring at the junior high. So we do have those seasonal parking restrictions, but this one is one that, number one, the school hasn't been in operation for a while. So there's certainly not that demand that you would have during the day, and then it would be sporadic as it relates to the use of the street in that area for parking as it relates to the use of the ball fields.
Yeah, I guess my personal opinion is until you need to make a change, I prefer to just leave status quo. If you were getting a lot of feedback from residents, hey, this hasn't been in use for 10 years, how about freeing some space up? I might feel differently. Doesn't sound like you're getting that. So to me, it's prudent not to make an action until we know what's going on there, and we don't know what's going on there. So I'd stay status quo. That's my opinion.
Do you notice any interference with the school buses on that roadway? If we were to allow parking on that south side of the street?
I do know that the school buses do go up both Krenz and Prairie because they're going behind what used to be Maplewood School to the transportation center that they have there. And I don't believe the traffic pattern will change because unless the extension is put in, and then the traffic pattern may change. But as it relates to this, there is concerns in regards to the width of the roadway and the school buses going through there, and maybe restrictions in those areas to accommodate those types of vehicles.
Any more questions on this, Jimmy?
My thought is, I'd like to see the downtown get, kind of figure out, get that done. And I agree that this is an issue that we need to address. I'm just not sure if now is the time, if it has to be done right now. If you felt it needed to be, then I would support, because you're out there, you guys are monitoring the streets, you know what's going on. So if you and your staff feel that this needs to be done, then I want to address it now. Otherwise, I'd prioritize it by saying, let's get the downtown done. We've just put a lot of money into the downtown area. It would be really nice to have the wayfinding signs, to have some definite continuity with regards to what are we allowing, Like I said, we have a hodgepodge, 15, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. We can come up with something that's a little bit more unified. I think that would be beneficial.
Okay, and this was more of an epiphany in regards to, hey, we're not going to have ball fields there. We have these seasonal parking restrictions in that area.
Yep.
I could leave it alone. Agreed. Everybody agree with that?
And then just a little bit of discussion about overnight parking. And it's we are an outlier. The Village of Cary is an outlier as it relates to allowing parking on the roadways. And what it does allow is I do receive, and I will make sure that I address this, because the individual came in and wanted me to make sure that I address this, was when we have recreational vehicles provisioning and they're able to park their vehicles on the road because it's not restricted otherwise between December 1st and March 31st. But if they come any other time, they can park their recreational vehicle in front of their house, and for 10 days they're provisioning so that they can continue, with their vacationing somewhere down the road. And the individual that came to discuss this, that resides on Briargate, believes that that shouldn't be allowed because it obstructs vision because they're relatively large vehicles. But, you know, the overnight parking bans tend to prohibit or at least restrict like commercial motor vehicles parking overnight on the roadways, individuals that might be using a residential area and running a business out of the house, they would park their equipment on the roadway so it's available, you know, when they're using it instead of finding another area to park it outside that residential area. But as you can see, in the area, there are some municipalities that have the ability to issue parking permits. We have that, by the way, but it's only for municipal vehicles during that restricted time. Firefighters, police officers that have take-home vehicles, and we allow them to park overnight on the roadway if they have a permit that we issue them. But the only Cary allows overnight parking except during December through March 31st, December 1 through March 31st. Fox River Grove tends to allow parking with the exception of trailers not connected to a power unit, commercial equipment, and commercial motor vehicles, and they're prohibited between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. So right now we're in that restricted overnight parking time, but we are certainly an outlier, and certainly I believe that, number one, the downtown area would be served very well by having a prohibition of overnight parking in those areas, number one, and maybe there's time to start discussing or considering some types of restrictions in the residential areas in regards to overnight parking. But again, we are definitely an outlier as it relates to this. Director Simmons, did you want anything to say about this?
I'll say just from a code enforcement standpoint, with having restrictions for overnight parking, it does help to identify vehicles that are either inoperable or not being individuals having too many vehicles on their property or being stored on their property. Overcrowding issues sometimes can be identified that way, where if you have several vehicles serving in a property that doesn't have adequate storage off-site for parking, it can help identify those type of code enforcement issues as well. So as the chief mentioned, we are a bit of an outlier in this case. It's historically not been an issue, or we've never had overnight parking in this community restriction other than the winter months. But other communities in the area just significantly do regulate that. It does help from an enforcement standpoint to identify problem properties that you might have from a code enforcement standpoint.
And I will also caution you that change is difficult. So, people in the municipality have become used to being able to park overnight on streets, on those during that time period that's not restricted. And I do believe that there will be some discussion with the public at large as it relates to some type of change in this regard.
So we're seeking any input from the committee if there's a desire to explore this or not.
I'll input, yes. Yeah, yes, this as I very well put, Chief. I think that this should probably be a standalone item to discuss. We roll it into timing and, to your point, consistency on time on a lot downtown parking. It may get lost in the shuffle. This will be what people want to speak about, and I think we definitely need to have this discussion.
I agree.
And finally, I'll complain because we do have the responsibility of enforcing these regulations, and a 6-hour parking regulation could eclipse 2 shifts, right? So it would be difficult to enforce, number one. Number two, I will tell you that there are court cases that have addressed chalking tires, and the issue was that it's a search, and that search is unconstitutional without a warrant. So we have to find other manners or another manner in which to identify vehicles that have been parked in an area for a extended period of time. You know, there are ways you can do this. We can take pictures of the tire and the valve stem and then determine if it changed, you know, location, that vehicle had been moved from that parking space. But, you know, it sounds easy as it relates to enforcing these time restrictions as it relates to parking, but it becomes a little bit cumbersome because we do have to concern ourselves with, you know, those issues that, and I will tell you it's bad law. You know, I don't believe it's a search in regards to chalking a tire, but a court has said it is a search, number one, and number two, our risk management, IRMA, our Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency, I believe settled that and didn't pursue that to get a decision from the courts. So it's kind of not been fully argued and decided as it relates to is it or isn't. I think the Sixth Circuit has said that it's administrative search at the very most, and it is reasonable to do that, but no one has really definitively defined what is or isn't allowed as it relates to touching the car or marking a tire in regards to these parking regulations. So we have other mechanisms that we can use, but they are a little bit cumbersome. And I didn't think that you would ever think that that would become an issue.
No, that's, Chief, you and I have had this conversation many times about the enforcement, especially with the downtown. You know, all we want is compliance for people. That's what we do. That's why we do what we do, is we just want people to comply with our local codes and our ordinances. It's just the enforcement challenge.
Do we have any cameras downtown currently?
No.
No?
No, we don't have any cameras downtown. Unless they're associated with a business, but
Yeah.
we don't have anything that's, you know, like our license plate recognition cameras that we have. No, we don't have anything like that downtown.
Do you have a recommendation as to what is the best methodology or technique to use for enforcement?
It's a good question because you know, off the top of my head, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Chinatown, but he would put pocket watches underneath the tires so that they would know when the person left. But I don't know of we had discussed, and we discussed just chalking behind the tire on the pavement. And that's one mechanism or one manner to identify, you know, the length of time somebody's been there. You know, the valve stem and its location, you know, but again, you know, whenever we're looking at this from a standpoint that you have to have a baseline and then you have to come back to see if that vehicle is moved. That's why, you know, fire lanes, handicap parking, easy to enforce, you know, but when it comes to time restricted parking, it gets a little bit more cumbersome. And I'll tell you, Ron Rossi was our individual that was down there that was responsible for downtown parking enforcement and for the Metro lot. He did a great job. And Jackson, our new traffic safety officer, is learning, and he's doing a very good job too. But it does become cumbersome, and he's only a part-time individual.
Okay, anybody else have any other comments? Okay, next up on the agenda is home rule. Who's taking this, Courtney?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So over the past 2 meetings, we have discussed the potential.
Wait, did you want to wait to hear the presentation about it, or do you want to make your comments known before?
I can make the comments now.
Okay, fine, come on up. Just state your name and address for the record.
Sure, no problem. Neely Erickson, 405 East Congress Parkway. Thank you, Mayor Kounick and honorable trustees, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Neely Erickson, and I am the Government Affairs Director for Heartland Realtor Organization. I am joined here today with 2 of our members, Michael Ryan and Sandra Anker. Could you just raise your hands to signify? Thank you. Heartland Realtor Organization is a voluntary trade association whose more than 1,500 members are engaged in all facets of the real estate industry in McHenry County. In addition to serving the professional needs of members, Heartland works to protect the rights of private property owners. We do this by recommending and promoting legislation that safeguard and advances the interest of real property ownership. As an industry that contributes to the economic vitality of the region, we are concerned about the unlimited government authority and power that comes with home rule. Why do realtors oppose home rule? Under home rule authority, the village assumes the power to tax and regulate how they choose without limit and without voter approval, which takes the taxpayer out of the equation and how they want it to be taxed to fund government services and operations. Some villages pursuing home rule may pass resolutions promising not to exceed debt limits or self-imposing property tax caps. Those promises are not binding and amount to no more than political theater. The protections offered by any resolutions can be removed by future board meetings. Moreover, the next set of elected officials are especially free from the past promises because they can argue that they were not the ones who made them, which makes any resolution an empty promise. There are more than 51,000 realtors across the state of Illinois. We can share stories about the abuses of home rule power and how it affects housing access and affordability. These are not what-if scenarios for our industry. It's about when, and when it comes to home rule power, real estate is always the primary target for operations to be able to generate revenue, such as transfer taxes, housing regulations, and sales taxes, which all influence the cost of new construction, renovations, housing access, and affordability for both buyers and sellers. Thousands across McHenry County are struggling to secure housing, and additional regulations on the real estate industry will only widen the gap of home ownership and housing security. Simply put, home rule means more power in the hands of government and less power in the hands of voters. We sincerely thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns.
Thank you. Courtney, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. So the past few meetings, we've discussed what home rule is, what could be the benefits or advantages and disadvantages as it's related to home rule. And at the last committee meeting, the board asked us to go ahead and put together a potential engagement plan if we were to move forward with putting the referendum on the ballot. So in front of you tonight is a draft plan which contains multiple focus group presentations, community information meetings, as well as information booths between now and this is just a timeline, if we so choose, for the general primary election, which is March 19th, 2024. The goal ultimately is to get the word out as much as possible, get as much community feedback as possible as well, just to provide the facts as they're related to home rule and what home rule would mean for the village of Cary. Any questions just about the types, I guess, of meetings and information meetings that we've put before you?
I can see that this is just meetings, Courtney, but I'm assuming there would be, in conjunction with other information that would be displayed on websites, weekly newsletters, all types of things like that. This is just actual meetings you're talking about.
Correct. So then on the back of this also contains engagement strategies. So you're just reading my mind. And so this could include the village website, social media posts, using our Cary News Weekly, which is our weekly newsletter. We could also include direct mailings, inserts into our utility bills. Our next bill is the February bill. And then you could also, we could go with media releases, different posters. So there's a number of avenues that we would be able to take in order to get this information out.
And who do we envision being the recipients on the focus group? Generally, those are a little bit more spotted or maybe invitation only. Would we have specific target groups in mind for those two?
So we absolutely could. For example, looking at the local businesses, Chamber of Commerce, looking at the realtor community is something that staff has internally discussed as well. The seniors, of course, are a group that we want to get information to as well. So we absolutely could kind of choose those focus groups.
So as Assistant Administrator Sage mentioned, this is a kind of a rough outline. Per the discussion at the last meeting, we wanted to demonstrate that if the board chooses to, has a desire to move forward on this March timeline for that election for referendum, then we would be able to accommodate that with this approximate schedule and frequency of outreach. So if you had any feedback for us in terms of if that is sufficient what you were envisioning, it is a draft. That's why it is fluid. So none of the dates and locations are set yet. But in terms of frequency, we're looking to get a lot of solid contact with the community. There's meetings here at least every other week with other separate presentations and focus groups in between. So it is a lot of communication, a lot of engagement, which obviously is important for a matter like this. But we do feel it is possible. It will be an all-hands-on-deck effort from staff and our board. But it's something, if you desire to move forward on it, we think we can manage that. Beginning with, to make this timeline happen, we would have to have the consideration of that ordinance to send it to referendum at the next meeting on December 19th.
Do I have a consensus to put this on the next agenda for items for separate action? I do want to take a moment to address the realtors that are here. I understand, I hear you loud and clear. We deal with things on a daily basis regarding this. We have a lot of great respect for the people that put us in these chairs, that they can make educated decisions because they're putting us in this decision to make a difference for their best interest. The voters every 2 years have an opportunity to remove people that they don't feel like. So when you're saying something in perpetuity that it can't get changed, it can get changed. I've had many conversations with realtors that I know. I've had conversations with mayors that I know that have gone through this process. All I can do is tell you what the intent is on our board. We have no intention of imposing any type of retail or the real estate transfer tax. That's not part of this. We're dealing with a state that continuously takes things from us. It is time that we are able to have the self-determination that we can make the decisions that are on the best behalf of our residents in the village, residents and businesses in the village of Cary. I understand there's a lot of scare tactics that are out there. I've heard it. Through my Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus connections, I hear this all the time. There's scare tactics out there. They're just not true. They're just out there. We are not doing anything to try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. Not at all. We're being forthright. We have an active informational thing. You know, we as elected officials, when we're out in there, we can go out there and talk about this. But our staff is putting together a very robust information to tell people what things are and what they're not. You know, I talked to you when I was asked to, you know, I fought tooth and nail, and there's realtors that are out there that were against the affordable housing that fought us tooth and nail. And you and I had a conversation at the meeting from 2 months ago when we were talking about affordable housing. And I told you the struggles that we have. These struggles are real. We talk about things that are real all the time. And we look to make sure that we are going to provide facts. We're not going to overinflate. We're not going to underinflate. We're going to provide the facts. This is why it's important that this goes to a ballot. Let the voters decide. That's how my interpretation is on this. My interpretation is to make sure that people are making the decision with all the facts at their hand. And it's going to take this board, and we're committed to make sure that people have an opportunity. My big concern is what the state is doing to us. They continuously take more money. They continuously take more responsibility away from us, and that's not fair. What's the difference between a community with 18,000 people that is financially secure, that makes really good fiscal decisions? What's the difference between them and a community with 25,000? Nothing. It's an arbitrary number. I can understand people would be afraid for communities that would want to embark on a home rule thing when they're not fiscally responsible. They're making really boneheaded decisions. They're not really taking their time to make sure that things are being done, and they're not looking, further into what the state is doing, the restrictions that we do. The unfunded mandates that we have, the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of unfunded mandates, I don't want to put this on the taxpayers. I don't want to put this on property taxes. Our board is very tolerant when it comes to making sure that we don't just overinflate what our tax levy is. And I'm committed to doing that, and I want to make sure that we're going to provide the right facts. And we've had conversations in staff. We welcome an opportunity to talk to Heartland Realtor because we were told they're the ones that are going to come out against this. I would love to have a robust conversation with you and settle some of the issues that you perceive that might have. I look at what happens in the village of Cary. I'm not really that concerned about the other communities because we're making decisions that are best for us. And we will stand by whatever the voters decide. That's the opportunity that is given. And I felt like I needed to let you know that. I just want to make sure that we start off on the right track, that we are not doing anything to try to take away any property owner's rights. That is not the intent of this. We are looking to have more local control when it comes to a myriad of things. So with that, is there any other comments or questions about this?
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question too, a clarification and then a question. So Heartland Real Estate, is that just an independent broker? Is it an organization? What is the group?
It's an organization.
Okay.
It's a realtor organization.
Realtor, okay. So did I get the name right? Heartland Real Estate? Is that correct?
Okay, come on.
I just don't know how you want me to properly.
You were so fast at the beginning, I couldn't write that fast.
No problem. It's Heartland Realtor Organization. It's a local association. We have 3 stages. We have the state association, a national association, and all of our members belong to a local association. And so the local association is Heartland Realtor Organization.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the question that I have, based on the outline you provided, is it your organization's feeling that you're not supportive of home rule just for the implications that might be to an individual's home, or is it for all? Because home rule is a lot more than just putting a fee for a transfer tax.
Correct.
So are you against home rule for all of the potential improvements that a village could make to its financial situation, or are you only against home rule for the implications of an individual's home?
We're not against a village being able to improve its financial situation. We would have been very willing to discuss the non-home rule transfer tax that you all started discussing back on September 19th, and about how our organization could help educate individuals within your community about the benefit of a non-home rule sales tax, because that allows them to make the decision about how they want to fund government programs and services that they rely on through the village of Cary. So our position in regards to the home rule is we primarily focus on real estate issues, and that is that the ability for these items that you may discussing, such as fire sprinklers, mandating fire sprinklers in new construction or retrofitting them in single-family homes, is something that a home rule municipality automatically assumes the authority for, and this is something that is financially a hindrance to new construction and affordability and access. And so there's many real estate items that come under home rule that we are very concerned about. And it's just outside of the transfer tax, but it primarily focuses on how an individual, exercises their private property rights, whether or not they choose to want to have a fire sprinkler or not, or it goes beyond just that. But no, we're not opposed to a municipality improving its financial status, but we're opposed to how it impacts the homeowner or how it impacts the owner of that property.
Okay, so then is it more fair to say that home rule in general you're just opposed to, period, because there's no way to know what the village.
Correct. Not only that, but as we recognized, even though a council can consider passing a resolution, as you all discussed back in your December 7th meeting about passing a resolution stating that you wouldn't go past PTEL. Well, you can't go past PTEL now with the non-home rule status, and you can still collect all the new construction and the EAV growth and all of that stuff under non-home rule. And so really, if you don't want to create the impact on on property taxes, that means that you're going to have to create or increase new taxes and fees in order for the village to improve its financial status. And our concern is about the unknowing of what those taxes and fees could be in the future. And as I've said, there's over 220 municipalities of over 1,200 across the state of Illinois that have home rule. And with 66 of them, upon immediately obtaining home rule, you want to know the first thing that they did? They passed a real estate transfer tax. So yes, so we are concerned. And so even if you were to put that in a resolution, it would still be a concern of ours. And so that's why we're saying we've seen other things, demolition taxes. Municipalities want to address vacant and blighted properties. Well, when a developer comes in and they automatically have to pay a $10,000 demolition tax just to have the ability to transform that property for the municipality, they then have to come to a council meeting and ask for a waiver, to be able to do that. But we see all kinds, and under home rule, it can be anything. It doesn't even have to be something within state statute now. We've seen municipalities discuss a public arts impact fee. So it's just like I said, it can be anything. And so that's why, as you say, the unknowing is out there. But these are not scare tactics. These are real life scenarios that we have seen municipalities discuss.
Yeah, I can appreciate
Okay,
that.
I apologize. I've sat here and listened through a lot of this opinion, and I appreciate that. And I just want to bring in a couple of facts. You noted 1,200 home rule. Is that correct? The number
No,
is
there's more than 1,200 municipalities.
And there were
There's more than
66 that immediately enacted that. That is 0.055%. So it's less than 1%. So I would appreciate having the conversation that the mayor has offered to have with the Realtor and your organizations, but I do not believe that this is a format for a pulpit for you. We have not made any decisions. I realize you're trying to answer Trustee Dudek's conversation, but what you did at that point is you then launched into more of your conversation and you're pushing your agenda. We don't have an agenda yet. We haven't brought this yet. This is not for us to decide. This is for the voters to decide. So you are welcome to make your case to the residents of Cary and plead your, but this is the Village of Trustee Board, not the Village of Real Estate Board. Okay, we represent all of the residents and we represent all the businesses in Cary that are not real estate. We, as a group, consistently talk on trying to not burden property tax. That's the focus you keep coming back to. We're trying to not burden the property tax. By the way, we are like one of the smallest portions of the property tax, okay? So we are very cognizant of that. But there are only so many levers that we have to pull, and the mayor very rightfully stated that we are getting unfunded mandates. And the only lever we have to pull at this point is property tax, and we don't want to do that. We've all agreed on that countlessly. We need the flexibility to be able to do that. So, again, and I apologize for jumping in here, but I don't want this to be us promoting it. I don't want this to be you opposing it. This is for the voters to decide. We are going to have our communication pieces. You're welcome to attend all those, and you're welcome to make your point to all of the folks using all the same media and using all the same tactics that we're going to use to put both sides of the village is not going to put out information that just says this is the best thing you need to vote for. We're going to put out there the pros and the cons and educate our residents when it comes time for them to vote. If it does pass on the referendum and they think that those of us that are on these seats were the people behind it, I can tell you exactly when I'm up for election and you're welcome to vote me out. That's the way the voting process works. That's the way the democracy works. So this is what we're going to put forward at our next meeting and decide if this is what the board wants to get behind. So I thank you for your information.
Do you need anything else from me? Any
No,
other
I just
questions?
wanted to clarify, our attorney, we've had this discussion too, I didn't get into this too, but we talked about the real estate transfer tax, and you said 60% of that. In order for us to do a real estate transfer tax, that has to be a separate referendum. Mm-hmm. So the voters would have another chance to say yes or no. And I know that you don't like to hear the word resolution, but we're resolved in the fact that we are committed to keeping our property taxes low. You know what the number one thing that we put out survey after survey after survey? Do you know what the number one thing that our residents want?
Lower property taxes.
No. They want roads. They
Roads.
want better roads.
Mm-hmm.
You know how much money the Village of Cary gets every year for roads?
Not enough.
Not enough.
Obviously, that's
we
why
have
we're in this
78
position.
miles worth of roads, and we're trying to figure out. We had a robust road project, many, when I was in 2009, 2010, we got Build America bonds. We bid off $5 million, and we got our roads up to where they are. So when we're looking at our CIP, and I welcome you to come to one of our CIP and talk about what we have to look at when it comes to spending money on our taxpayers' behalf. And we want to make sure that we are giving our taxpayers what they look for. And every single survey, like I just said, they want really good roads. And that is our goal. And we can't do that with, we get $750 a year through our MFT. Pardon me? 750,000. God, we did. I couldn't even do a pothole. But anyway, that's Illinois for you. No, but we need to work together to make sure that we're educating people with the right facts. You may have a different way of looking at things than we do. We have an operation to run here. We have services that we have to provide. You sat through our new police deputy chief and our sergeant. We've got a police department that depends on us for making the right decisions so that we're able to continuously provide top-notch security and safety for all of our residents. So it's not just about real estate transfer taxes. We haven't even talked about doing fire suppression systems in homes. I don't think anybody would want to do that. We're looking at making sure that our residents can live in the village of Cary free of ridiculous burdens that a lot of other people put on, especially the state. We want to make sure that we're giving them everything that they need at an affordable price. Our real estate tax that we take from our residents is like 4.some%. 4.86%. My little bird on the side here. That's not a lot of money to do what we do. And so when we look at these things, we've had very robust conversations. We've had opportunities that we're going to do, and you're on our list to put Heartland Realtors on there because we were warned that you're going to come out against this. But I said, I want to have an opportunity to discuss this, have a rational discussion. We may agree to disagree, but that discussion we have to have on behalf of our taxpayers.
Well, I wish we could have had the discussion rather than us seeing it on an agenda, having been outreached to let us know. I'd been following the issue since September 19th as to where the conversation had been going, so I am aware of that. And I am not using this as an opportunity for a pulpit, and thank you for the opportunity to address your questions. And we look forward to working with you further.
Card? Do you have your card?
I gave you my card at the meeting, but I'm happy to give it to you again.
It's
Yes,
probably my desk.
absolutely.
Right,
Yep.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Courtney, did you have more information?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. Back to my agenda here. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I say one thing? I missed department head reports because I was.
You were having cake.
No.
Eating your cake.
Let me correct the record. I was not having cake, although there's probably some left. But I just wanted to make a mention that we had 8 of our personnel participate in the Shop with a Cop. 9 children from Cary and the surrounding area were participants, and I just wanted to kind of address and recognize those officers that participated because they were up at 6 o'clock Sunday morning before the parade. So we were all up at 6 o'clock, and then we had to work the parade. But it was Sergeant Rutson, Officer Lacrone, Officer Dutton, Officer Haglin, Officer Lorenz, Officer Fiore, Officer Hallis, and then myself were there bringing people up to the Walmart, and then they went to Glacier Ridge School to have breakfast, and then after we sugared them up, we give them back to their parents.
Well, thank you for
Chief.
doing
I appreciate that. And is there anything else? Anybody else has anything to say? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:23.